Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about deploying microservices on Kubernetes. Pretty much same for any Kubernetes version you are using, whether it is from some cloud provider like JKE or from AWS, or it is on-prem Kubernetes environment that you may have. The main focus of today's discussion is once you have the Kubernetes cluster set up, then how to accelerate your developer productivity when you want them to deploy their services easily. So here we have this action which has already deployed the Kubernetes cluster on Azure. So this is not the part that we are going to discuss much about. So we already have Kubernetes there. We have already installed Devtron as a part of the Kubernetes deployment itself and done all the cluster bootstrapping or whatever you need to have on a global infrastructure point of view. So we have all these things, and now we have a tool known as Devtron. So Devtron helps your developer to deploy their services without getting to know the behind the scene Kubernetes stuff that essentially you will have to have if you are not using something like Devtron. So Devtron is a kind of a developer platform, for internal developer platform for your organization, and here you can create applications. And in today's discussion, what we are going to do is we have two application. One is front app, one is backend app. So we are going to create these two front end backend application in a microservices pattern, and we'll see that how easy it is to deploy using Devtron these services. So if I go ahead, and so for the first thing which start from the developer point of view is that your developer team will have some kind of environment. So if this is the place which start from the developer onboarding point of view. So you can see there is already a cluster, so I can add as many cluster as I may want as an infrastructure team. But considering this demo, we will just go with the default cluster, and I will create a new environment for this application. So I'm going to name this environment as ADP demo. So I'm just naming it like I'm doing the demo, and then this environment is dedicated for a namespace in Kubernetes ecosystem. So it will create a namespace. And am I going to create this environment for production or non-production? So it's a production environment. So as soon as I have created this environment, this is ready for use. So if I go ahead and look at the current Kubernetes thing, of course I have just created this namespace, so there should not be anything. So right, so there is nothing, but now we are going to create things over here, and the way we will create is creating the application. So you have different ways of doing it, using custom app, using chart store, or using jobs. So jobs are pretty much typical Kubernetes jobs. Chart store is something you already have a Helm chart and you want to deploy them. That is the another way. But in today's discussion, we are going to go with the custom app. In upcoming session, we will be discussing about the chart store and jobs as well. But for today, we are going to custom app. So when you select custom app, you want to give a custom app name. So for our application, we will first create the backend. So we will say Azure back of the application, and then the project I want to create is Devtron demo. So I can either create another project, or I can create so before that, let me create the project. So because I have already created the project here, ADP demo, and I'll say this. So now I'll go ahead again, create the app, Azure code back. It's a backend application I'm going to create, and I'm going to create then demo, and then I will go ahead and create the app. Now, the moment I will create the app, it will ask me from where the code will be coming. So code is here on my repo. I'll go ahead and provide this repo link. And the next step would be provide the build configuration. And the build configuration is where exactly this app will be built, and then where exactly it will be pushed. So I can configure as many container registry I can. I mean, right now it is configured with Docker Hub. This is something infrastructure team has to decide what are the registry they support. So right now it is considered to be Docker Hub, but you can create different types of providers as well. Now I'll go back to the configuration, and here I will push it to this repository. Now this repository is already there. And let me open the Docker Hub that you can see. Okay, so you can see that it's there front, and then we are going to create this one in a bit. And this is back. The last time I updated was 21 hours, but right now we'll go ahead and push it. So yeah, and I have a Docker file. I want to create a Docker file or build with the Docker file without a Docker file. So I will go with the Docker file because my application already have a Docker file that I created during my testing. So the Docker file I have for back is there in this folder. So I'll go back and go to the repository and go to the app and go to the back. And this is the path where I have this Docker file. Now, if you have a look on this Docker file, and I will go there and have a look there, push it here. So if you go there and have a look on the Docker file, then you'll see it's nothing but, creating my own container for Redis. So I'm not doing anything, specific for backend. My backend application is a Redis, server, which, saves the data, state of the data for my application. So pretty much simple. I'll go back and go to the next. And here, the backend app supposed to be have some port, the basic things. So this can be configured with this UI interface, or you can go back to the little bit more what you can say, more advanced level of configuration. But right now I have a very simple configuration that I need to make for this repo for this one, and I already have this Docker Compose which tells me that this backend is supposed to run on this 6379. I'll go ahead and configure this port both for container and service. My service is also 6379, and other than that I don't really have anything much to configure. I will just check the service type over here, and service type is cluster IP. Because it's a backend, I will keep it like cluster IP. No one has to access it from outside cluster. So I'll go back and click on save. Now I have configured the build configuration. Now I need to create a workflow that will be responsible for defining how the build will happen and how the deployment will happen. So for that, I will go ahead and click on build, and let me see the options here. So you can see you have 3 options. You can use the same source code, you can use a linked pipeline, so from the Devtron itself, or you can deploy it from external services as well. So right now we'll go with the first option, and I'll just name it like branch. So you have these different types of triggers. So I will go with the simple one, branch fixed, and I will select main and create pipeline. And once I have created the build pipeline, and in build pipeline, I have the option to define pre-build or post-build stage. For this application, I don't really have anything, really special about it. It does have an option to scan for vulnerability. I will go ahead and enable this one. And nothing more here, but yes, if you need, you can add as many things, pre-build and post-build tasks. So right now I don't have anything as of, so I will remove this and go to the build stage and update this. And after I have built, I can deploy this. So I'll go ahead and deploy this, and where I want to deploy, I want to deploy an ADP demo, ADP namespace, and then it has to be, automatic, rolling, or blue green or whatever. So I'll go with rolling update, or and then go ahead and create pipeline. So this is creating the backend. Now I have created the configuration, but I have not yet triggered. So if we go to the image, it is still 21 hours back. So I'll go ahead and trigger this for CI, and the moment I triggered it, it is starting the CI and will publish the image and then pull it and then deploy it to the cluster. And again, if I go back to my cluster and if I still search, of course there will be nothing. Yeah, there is no deployment yet. It is still kind of triggering. So if I go here and go to the build history, it is showing me the build. So it is still kind of in progress. Now while it is deploying, I will go ahead and explain certain information here that is useful. So once you deploy your application, you have various options available to you from the application details. So right now it is still deploying. It will not show the app details as of now, but yes, you can have deployment matrices, and it will soon show here in a bit, as soon as the first deployment will happen. So you have all these different matrices available, and that we will see in a bit once it is deployed. Let me just wait. And yeah, so it's still building. Okay, so it has already tagged it, it has already scanned the image, and looks like it has already pushed the image. And if I yep. So as you can see, it's just updated the image with this build pipeline. And if I go here and see that the build has already succeeded, now as we have automated trigger for deployment, it has already started the deployment as well, and it will soon show you what's going on. So you can see what are the manifest I'm creating, what are the services I'm creating, and what is the status. So right now it is still in progress. Behind the scene, it is using Argo workflow. So it's more of GitOps thing that is being used here. And the thing that you can the administrator will configure the GitOps repository where all the manifest data is being pushed, and we will see that in a bit once we will deploy both the application backend and front end. So right now it is backend, and if I go here and see the service, it's getting deployed. Now while this is progressing, let's go ahead and create the front end. And for front end, I will need one thing from here, and that's service. And from service manifest, I will need this name. Just copy this. I will let you know why I am needing it. It's very much specific to this application. So if I go back, and so it's healthy, we'll see all the details in a bit. So let me go ahead and create another front end, which is part of the same application, but it's another microservice. So I will say Azure code front, and it is again going to the same project. Project is a kind of a virtual logical container you can think of, assigned to one particular team or product. Yeah, so for this application also, the repository remains same. So I'll go ahead to the repository URL, take this URL from there and put it there. So both the application resides in the same repository. It can be different repository as well. So it's completely depend upon how your team operates and how large your applications are and how large your teams are. But now once I saved it, I'll go back and again do the same kind of stuff, little bit different here. So just from the task point of view, these are same tasks but little bit of configuration changes. So I'll say Ashish Raj S. Now this time the repository name will be different, and that would be Azure code already guessed. So this is front. So we have two images here. So what back is there, and now I have a front as well, and that is again 21 hours ago while I was testing it. So this is again, I'll configure this. I have a Docker file, and for front Docker file, the path I have is this and this. So here is my Docker file. So I'll select this path over here, and so this is the path I have, the Docker file, and I'll go ahead and configure the deployment. This time I will not go for rollout. I'll go for deployment, simple deployment. Pretty much Helm charts they have Devtron team is managing, but you can have your own Helm chart as well for selecting it here. But anyway, we will not get into that level of discussion. We are just looking at what Devtron gives you out of the box on day one. So as soon as you have created your cluster, you have installed Devtron, you are ready to go for developer productivity. Okay, for this application, if I will go to the Docker compose file again to just check what exactly the port should be. So for this 8080 and 80. So for this looks good, but services also 80. Code is 8080. Rest of the things looks good to me. The only one difference here I will make is the service type. So here by default service type is cluster IP. However, this is a front-end application and I want to access it from outside the cluster. So for that I will be using load balancer. Now here you can use ingress as well, but right now to make things easy, I'm making a load balancer, which is pretty much easy to do in a cloud Kubernetes environment. Now I will select this load balancer. Rest of the things looks good to me. And another thing which is important here, if I go back, that I need to create a environment variable, and that should be name Redis. The value is different, and I will explain you what it is. So the Redis is the name of the Redis service in the same namespace, if it is. So that I'm going to, and that is the one I copied last time from the deployment. I'm just pasting it here. So what it is like, it is pushing the environment variable into this pod, and so that the application which expect the Redis server to be available on this service will be able to connect. Yeah. So now if I go to the rest things looks good to me. 808080 and yeah, so front is container port 80 and this port 80, so we can keep it. Let's make it 8080 just to be sure everything works as expected. So yeah, now I'll go ahead and save it and create the new workflow. Same process, main branch, and go ahead and create the CI pipeline. I could create more tasks here, pre-build, post-build. I don't have anything over there, so I will just keep it like this, simple. And this one is also rolling update, so I'll go ahead and do this update. Now as soon as I will do this, again I have the option to build and deploy. This is the first time I will have to select this build. Go ahead and select the build. Now it's running the build. Yeah, so while it is running, we can go back to the backend and we can see some of the matrices. It's still kind of picking up. but you can see all the manifest file. You can go to the terminal, you can log in there, you can do the troubleshooting. If it's a multi-container app, you can switch the containers. So all those stuff you can do from the day two operations point of view, from the developer centric approach. So you want to debug your containers, you want to debug your pod, you want to look at the logs, what's happening there in your container. All this is available from this interface itself. Behind the scene, whether it's GKE, whether it is AKS, whether it is EKS, whether it is on-prem Kubernetes, developer need not to worry about those platform specific Kubernetes things. Here you just create your application, you are ready to go. And the moment you deploy this, you are able to see the matrices from your application, as well as you can see the deployment metrics for your environment, how your team is doing, how successful they are, how many failures are happening. All these DORA matrices are available to you for those microservices, which is really cool thing from here. So this way it makes your application team productive from day one. The moment you have your Kubernetes cluster, you can expose this cluster to your application team without having to worry about what are the different permissions they will have to have, what are the different tooling they have to have, all those things. This all things taken care by Devtron. Now let's go back to the front app, and it looks to be going in the right way. So let me see what is the service IP. So there will be an IP because we have selected a load balancer here. This is Azure load balancer, must have been created anyway. So just go there, hit the enter, and you can see this is your front end. And the front end is nothing but talking to Redis in behind the scene. So this is the way you can deploy your application, and you can see, so it's failing because of something, and you can see why it is failing. If I go back, and there is intentional problem here that I just wanted to show, that you can go there and you can go to the logs, and this platform is showing you that something happened, and due to which the pod is restarting. So you can see all these things here, and you can actually go into the terminal and you can connect to this pod, and you can do some troubleshooting, looking the log either from here or go more deeper inside your pod. So those things are available. Apart from that, you can also see some of the application matrices, which is still coming up in a bit. It will come because it's still collecting all the information from there, and it will show you what how many CPU uses, how many memory uses, and as I said, you have this deployment matrix for this front as well. So this way you can see all the different kind of, have this build history, you have your deployment history, typical, still kind of synchronizing with Argo CD. So in some time it will show you, and you can trace it back to your source code as well, which source code, who did it, and what they have done, so you can see what changes were done. So this is the way you can use Devtron for deploying application on the Kubernetes cluster. In this demo, we have used AKS, which is one of the popular Kubernetes cluster that is being used in environments today, but you can use any other cluster. The developer need not to know the terminology for those specific platform. So this is the way you can deploy your platform. Thank you.